Good morning, Highland, or good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this. Glad that you have tuned in to our weekly Bible study on this Sunday morning. We are continuing our study in the book of Genesis, and we are in Genesis chapter 37. If you have been tuning in every week and you have our textbook that we're using, which is the Gospel Advocates Foundations Quarterly, we are in lesson 7, so hopefully you read through lesson 7 already in preparation for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get into Genesis 37. We are going to read through the entire chapter. We're going to stop along the way and we're going to make note of some things as we're stopping and looking through this chapter. And then at the end, we're going to give the big picture. And really, the big picture here, you don't really get from just reading chapter 37, but since we are introducing a new character, which, of course, if you were raised in the church, you know this is not necessarily a new character to you, but as we're reading through and surveying through the book of Genesis, we are further introduced to Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob, or as he is now known as Israel. Now, keep in mind that in Genesis 35, we're actually told or introduced to the name Joseph as one of the sons of Israel. But in chapter 37, we're actually looking at him more deeply, and he is going to be the center of the rest of the book of Genesis. So, looking at chapter 37, we're going to note some things here. And hopefully, I'm not here to teach you necessarily something new, but rather just look further into some details as it relates to the bigger picture that we're going to address at the end. So, Genesis 37, starting at verse number 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of he was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report to them, to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us, or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So we're going to stop there for just a moment. So again, we are introduced to Joseph, and he is 17 years old, so he's a teenager. And the way in which we're introduced to Joseph is a little interesting, right? Keep in mind that there is a lot of dysfunction here in this family. Obviously, Israel, also known as Jacob, has many wives and has several sons between all of these wives. And Rachel, who is his favorite wife, bores him the son Joseph. Okay, so Joseph is not one of the older brothers, he's one of the youngest brothers. And so he's the son of Israel's old age. There's already this tension before you even read about Joseph and the tension between his brothers. You already see that there's favoritism at play. You already see the dysfunction that is happening in this family. So when we're introduced to Joseph bringing this bad report of his brothers, I think we can already assume that there is tension between Joseph and his brothers. Now you can take that account either two ways. Either you can take it as Joseph is doing the right thing, and Joseph truly believes in what he is doing, what his brothers are doing, and pastoring the flock. So he's doing the right thing. He's reporting the bad news because of the fact that they have a reputation at play. There's a reputation on the line as Israel and his son's main career is pastoring the flock. Or you can take it the other way, that Joseph is basically being a tattletale, right? We all had siblings that we probably tattletaled on if we had siblings. And so maybe Joseph is doing that. It may be legitimate that they're doing something bad, that they're not pastoring the right way. But we can appreciate that there's tension here. Either way you look at it, there's tension here. And so Israel trusts Joseph by taking this report. So you already see the tension, but to further the tension, Israel shows his affection more to Joseph than his other sons. And his other sons can clearly see it. And not only that, Israel provides Joseph with the famous coat of many colors. So not only does Israel show his affection more to his brothers, but there's a symbol that Jacob or Israel gives to Joseph. That's a reminder to his brothers every single day that Joseph is the favorite. So you can clearly see the tension there and the problems, that the brothers hated him so much that they could not speak peacefully to him. Every time they speak to him, there is disdain. Every time they speak to him, they want to strangle him. They can't have a healthy conversation with Joseph. So I truly believe that Joseph knows that there's tension. And I do think, too, that to an extent, Israel must know that there's some type of problems between Joseph and his other sons. But to further the matters worse, or to make matters worse, Joseph then has these two dreams. The first dream, he tells just the brothers. And the dream basically is they're gathering sheaves together, binding sheaves, and Joseph's sheaf is standing upright while the rest of his brother's sheaves are round about his sheaf, and they're bowing down to him. And then in the second dream, he tells not only the brothers, but he also tells his father and maybe even the rest of the family. And now he's saying that the sun and the moon and the 11 stars are all bowing down to him. And so their observation is absolutely correct, both the brothers and their father. The brothers are saying, shall we bow down ourselves to you? Should you become the ruler? Should you become basically the patriarch? Now, what's the problem with this? If you know the patriarchal system, there was one man that held that position over the entire family. And basically what Joseph is saying is that I'm going to be the patriarch. In this dream, I become the patriarch. In this dream, they are supposed to submit themselves to me. Now, I'm sure Israel's like, I'm the patriarch here. How are we supposed to bow down to you? And then his brothers are like, well, there are other people in line once Israel passes. There are other people in line for the position of patriarch before you, Joseph. So how dare you say we're going to bow down before you? Now, of course, we know already that this is a vision. I don't know if Joseph knows this exactly. The text doesn't say that Joseph knows that this is a vision from God. All he knows is this is a dream. So either he's taunting his brothers or he's innocently telling them about his dreams. Maybe this was a habit of his, I don't know. But however you want to look at it, they definitely took it as a threat to their leadership, a threat to their future as patriarchs of the family. They took it as a personal threat. But what's interesting here is in verse 11 that Jacob or Israel takes what Joseph said and basically stores it away. Now, it's possible the reason why Jacob is storing it away is that, keep in mind, Jacob wasn't supposed to be the patriarch either. Esau was. Esau was supposed to be given the birthright, but remember, Jacob stole it from him. So Jacob was not supposed to be in the position that he is here in this passage, but he is. And so it's possible that maybe Jacob remembers that, and it's possible that, maybe Joseph is saying something towards the future. Maybe this is a vision, and that eventually this is supposed to happen, which he's already the favorite anyway. So it would make sense for Jacob to then start to, raise him up or teach him, mentor him into the position that maybe, possibly he's going to have. So again, this is all speculation. The text doesn't necessarily say that, but it's just interesting knowing Jacob's track record that he's storing these dreams away. Okay. Let's continue on in verse 12. Now, his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them." And he said to him, "Here am I." So he said to him, "Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I am seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock." And the man said, "They have gone away, for I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. So let's stop there for just a moment. So I think Israel remembers Joseph and the fact that Joseph had no issue with giving a report to Jacob about his brothers. And I think there's some type of concern that Jacob or Israel has based on reports that Joseph has given about his brothers. They're somehow not doing fully the job that they're supposed to be doing as shepherds, that Joseph would feel the need to give a bad report. If you look at Jacob's task that he gives to Joseph, he says, "Go and see if it is well." That word "well" there is the same word used in verse number 4 for peacefully, when it says that the brothers could not speak peacefully to him. This idea of welfare, right? So I think you can, just from knowing the word here, I think you can get a glimpse into the fact that there's some concern that Israel has for what his sons are doing and how they are pasturing his flock. So he sends the errand boy, who has no problem giving a report to his father. But as he sends him to Shechem, which is several miles away from where they are in the valley of Hebron, he sends him over there, and Joseph can't find his brothers. They had left Shechem into Dothan. But what's interesting is that there's a man who finds Joseph wandering around looking for his brothers. And the man asks him, "What are you seeking?" And Joseph tells him, "I'm seeking my brothers. Do you know where they've gone?" Now, I find it interesting that we don't know anything about this man. And the only thing that we're told is that he finds Joseph wandering and that he knows where his brothers went. And he even knows a conversation that his brothers were having, that they were going to Dothan. Now, here's what's interesting about this, other than the fact that we don't know anything about this man, that the Jews, the Jews of old, believed or had a tradition in believing that this man was a messenger of God. And this is consistent with the fact that all of these patriarchs from Abraham to Jacob all had an encounter with either God himself or a messenger or an angel of God. So all of these men had encounters with God. So it is believed that this is an encounter with of Joseph with God or with a messenger, which is kind of consistent again of all of the patriarchs before him. And this man says nothing, or this man is not revealed to us of who he is, and he knows his brothers. Now, there are other people living in the land, so it is quite possible that this man knew Joseph and his brothers. But there were other people in the land, so how would this man know that it was these brothers and it was this flock that Joseph was talking about when there are other people living there? So again, it's possible. It's a good chance that this possibly is a messenger of God, an angel, or maybe even Jesus himself, because we've already seen that, and Chris has done a great job of this, that they've had encounters with even the Son of Man, the Word, as the Apostle John points out. So, but nevertheless, this man points him to the direction of Dothan. And so Joseph definitely finds them. But let's see what happens. Verse 18. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand, to restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. So what's going on here? The brothers, as Joseph is making his journey, they want to kill him. So the hatred for him is so vivid. It's there to the point that they want to kill Joseph. But Reuben, the oldest brother of the oldest son of Israel, hears about it, and he approaches the brothers and says, "Nope, we're not going to kill him." Now, before you paint Reuben as this hero, which he's definitely not, because Reuben still has hatred for his brother, that he at least wants to scare Joseph. So they still want to put him in the pit, or he wants to put Joseph in the pit. But he eventually wants to return him to his father unharmed. So he doesn't want to kill him. But he still, wants to scare Joseph. Okay, so let's not paint Reuben as this great hero. He still has disdain for his brother. So Reuben definitely saves Joseph from being killed. but they're still going to put Joseph in the pit. So they, once Joseph comes into land, they take his robe off, strip it off of him, and they put him in this pit where there's no water in it. All right, let's continue on. Verse 25. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a cavern or caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be put upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. So Judah, which is ironic because through Judah is where we get the seed line to Jesus. But Judah finds it more valuable not to kill him because, one, he's our flesh, he's our father's son, and we can't conceal his blood. We'll be murderers, right? So instead of doing that, let's sell him over and make a profit. So we see this caravan of Ishmaelites, which are Midianites, and it's using the same terminology. Um, these Ishmaelites are Midianite traders. They see him passing by, and so they say, "Let's sell Joseph over to them." And so they do so for 20 shekels of silver, and they take these Midianites, these traders take Joseph to Egypt. Notice what happens next. When Reuben, verse 29, returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" So Reuben was not present when this occurred. When he comes back, he sees the pit. Maybe he was ready that Joseph learned his lesson, and he sees that the pit is empty, and so he's mourning. Uh, he knows that he's in big trouble as the oldest brother who's supposed to be taking care of his other brothers for his father. He's tearing his clothes. He's in complete mourning, and he knows, I can't go back to my father like this. I can't go back knowing that his favorite son is gone. So where shall I go? So they devise a plan. Notice what happens. Verse 31. Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt, torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Shiloh to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, to the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard. So we don't know who devised this plan, but they were all a part of it, including Reuben, dipping their brother's robe into goat's blood and then bringing it to his father. And they let his father fill in the blanks or fill in his own fantasy, and his father then thinks of the lie that Joseph was killed by a wild animal. Now, Jacob tears his garments and he's mourning for his son for days. And when everybody's trying to comfort him, knowing fully well of what they've done, Jacob says, no, I don't want your comfort. I'm going to mourn for Joseph, my favorite son, for a long, long time. So you have to think of the emotional toll, not only on Jacob for losing his favorite son, but the fact that nothing is going to change. They thought if they got rid of Joseph, that all of a sudden Jacob was going to just show so much love and appreciation to his brothers, but the opposite happens. He completely shuts down. So they thought that their plan was going to make everything better, but it makes things much more worse. Makes things much more worse. But that really leads into really the point of all of this. So Joseph is being sold to Potiphar, who is the officer or chief officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. And from then on, Joseph is going to go from a slave to a prince, being the right hand or second in command to Pharaoh. So what is God doing? Is God at play here? He certainly is. He's taking an event that is supposed to bring Joseph's demise, and he's taking that and he is creating something fantastic, something amazing. Continuing the line to Jesus, making Joseph a prince, eventually bringing Jesus the king. And remember, Joseph is a type of Jesus here. He is a vision or an image of what is to come. Joseph is about to become a prince. So we can see that God is at play, taking something that is evil and turning it to bring glory to God. And God not only did it here, but he continues to do that throughout Scripture and even in our own lives. But we have to be awake enough to see how God is working in our lives today. So we can see the providence of God. And here in text, we can see the miracles of God as well. But we definitely see God's providence in providential care with Joseph and the future of his family. So that's the big picture. And again, we don't see it necessarily just from 37. We have to continue throughout the entire story. We have to read all the way to the end to see the providence of God at play and to see that the promises that God made to Abraham many years ago are being executed as these times go on. So the promises are still at play here. And we don't have to read all the way to the book of Exodus or beyond to see that. We can see it playing out here in the Abrahamic story. So that's your lesson. Hopefully you learned something, and hopefully we can take this lesson and apply it to our lives and continue to see the providence of God working in our lives today. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us, and we hope and pray that our messages are encouraging and are uplifting and are helpful in your walk with God. To get more information and more content for your journey with God, we want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also join us on Facebook and like our page there, and you'll get all of our messages, our Bible classes, and any other messages that might come down our pipe as we continue to create and try to share God's Word. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.